And welcome back to the Kiosk Presents. You know, men, you may be traveling your life 500 miles an hour, Mach 10 with your hair on fire, and all of a sudden you get some really bad news. I mean, there isn't a family in America that isn't affected some way by cancer. And the minute a man hears about that, you know, it conjures up all sort of preconceived notions and things. And frankly, to help us today to talk a little bit about that, we've got National Hot Rod Association World Champion Fast Jack Beckman and his associate, Dr. Patrick Cobb, who's an oncologist for the Frontier Cancer Center and Blood Institute in Billings, Montana. Welcome to the Kiosk Presents.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Jack, can you tell us a little bit about your story? I mean, you've been a champion NHRA drag racer off and on for many, many years now. 2004, you win a championship and you get some stunning news, didn't you?
Yeah, I wasn't feeling good for a while in late 2003, leading into early 2004, and I went to the doctors a couple of times, and it took a while to get a diagnosis, and it certainly wasn't the one I was expecting. And when they told me I had cancer, it was pretty dizzying time. And on top of that, they said, you're going to go through a chemotherapy regimen. I didn't even know what questions to ask, Brian. I mean, to talk about a odd set of circumstances, you went from driving a high-performance race car to being told you're going to go through this. I didn't even know where to start. And part of the program and the reason that Dr. Cobb and I are here is to give people that place to start, whether you're the person diagnosed with cancer or maybe you're a loved one and can be an advocate for that person. This Chemo Myths or Facts campaign is here to debunk a lot of the myths and give people a place to start to educate themselves.
Well, Dr. Cobb, can you tell us, what are some of the common myths that are associated with chemotherapy?
Well, when patients are diagnosed with cancer and they're about to take chemotherapy, there's a lot of things that people get concerned about. And Brian, you made a really good point, is that people have a lot of preconceived notions. They're worried about, is my hair going to fall out? Am I going to get sick at my stomach? And those two things, sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. Depends on the patient, depends on the type of chemotherapy. But one of the main myths that we hear is, well, if I'm on chemotherapy, it's going to affect my immune system so much that I'm not going to be able to interact with my family. I'm not going to be able to go to work. I'm not going to be able to go to the grocery store. And for most patients, that's a myth. Most patients can get chemotherapy and lead a fairly normal lifestyle. They don't have to be the boy or girl in the bubble. They can enjoy time with their family and friends and go to work and lead a fairly normal life.
Well, that's great. Jack, tell me, I mean, from an emotional level, I mean, you're married, you have kids. How was your experience with your family, and how did that fit into making you kind of overcome some of the challenges that you felt you were going to face?
Great question. I wasn't married. I was a single guy. You know, I worked out all the time. I stayed fit, and I still got cancer. And in fact, my wife was a friend of mine and was one of the advocates who would take me to some of my chemotherapy appointments. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of friends that helped me get through this. But a lot of them, they had advice that just wasn't accurate. You know, they told me you're not going to be able to race anymore. You're probably not going to be able to go to work. You know, I sat down and talked with my oncologist. This is a very important time of your life, and you want to be sensible and reasonable about this. But in my circumstances, I still was able to work most days and attend most of the races and do the things that I've loved. I'm 8.5 years in remission right now. My wife and I have a 6-year-old son and a soon-to-be 2-year-old daughter, so life's wonderful.
Oh, that's great. Well, and I know it hasn't affected your record on the track. You just won the 2012 Nitro Funny Car Eliminator, going, what, 333 miles an hour? That's awesome.
Yeah, that's my G-force therapy, Brian.
Wow, wow. Well, now, Doctor, could you tell us, where can people go to learn more about you know, these myths and how to overcome them? What resources can they go to?
Well, some of their best resources are to ask questions of the oncologists and the chemotherapy nurses. They have a wealth of information. They're more than happy to share that with you, but they need to know how you're doing. So ask plenty of questions. Tell them how you're feeling. The other is the program that Jack and I are working on, chemomythsorfacts.com. There's a lot of really good information there. There's links to other websites. There's videos. So this is a very good resource for patients and their families, for patients that are going through chemotherapy.
Okay, well, everybody in Buffalo, please take advantage of that. Look those things up. And Dr. Cobb, Jack, thanks very much for joining us today on the Kiosk Presents.
Thanks, Brian.
It's a pleasure, Brian. Thank you.